David was a scary guy, mostly because he was big and quiet. He wasn't a bully. Bullies travel in packs like jackals or garbage. David was by himself almost always. He'd have been their king if he'd so desired. Instead, he just made people uncomfortable by being real and in proximity. I made him laugh in class one time. I said, not a lot of people know that, in a terrible British accent. He thought it was great. He made me do it a few more times. I was excited because I thought we'd be friends. I thought that being his friend would prevent the shitheads from coming down on me, and this little fantasy never panned out. He gave me a head nod in the halls and sometimes asked me to say the thing again, but that was the extent of our friendship. We'd have looked like a cartoon anyway. He was 6'5" and 250 pounds. I was 4'11" and 93. Being my size means the bullies will target you, and they did. If David was around, he did nothing to stop it. I mean, not that I expected him to. It would have been nice, though. I saw him outside of school once, in the parking lot of a mall. I was walking with a friend, and we heard a guy shout. We turned to look, and there was David. He was like 200 feet away, but he was unmistakable. For 1 second, I imagined that he called out to me, that maybe we could be friends after all. But then another man appeared, an older man. He was big, but not as big as David. He yelled something, and David turned around. The other man hit him in the face, and David hardly moved. I thought for a moment that he was getting mugged. And then a woman ran up screaming. The older man turned to her, and David yelled the only word I understood, Dad. His father then punched his mother directly in the mouth. My stomach turned. I thought I was going to throw up. I'd never seen a grown man punch a woman like that before. And David tried to grab his father, but his father pushed him down. I couldn't see him now. He's between the cars. I couldn't tell if he was holding his father's leg or if his dad was kicking him, and I was praying it was the former. And all at once, 2 cop cars pulled up, and it was all over. We walked to our car, making sure David did not see us. I am not sure he would have even if he looked right at us. He was back at school that Monday. I wanted to ask him about what had happened, but I knew I couldn't. At the end of the day in photography class, he asked me to say that thing again, and I did, and he laughed. I almost cried when he laughed. It took everything I had to hold it together. If I cried, that would be the end of me. He didn't ask me to say much more over the next couple of months. He didn't do anything, really. He shuffled to and from classes, but never with any books. He never took notes or participated or was really there. And the teachers never pressed him. I didn't know if they were scared or if they knew about his circumstances. And then one day in the middle of class, he started crying. And I noticed at first because he sniffed, and he hadn't made any noise in weeks, so I looked. He was trying desperately not to. He started shaking. I wanted to throw a blanket over him and tell the teacher he was having a seizure or something. He saw me looking at him, and I just mouthed the word, go. I wanted him to just get up and leave. I mean, no one would stop him. He couldn't hold it. He didn't start wailing or anything, just a sharp intake of breath he could not control. It was like that small betrayal of emotion made physical, just that sudden need for air when he was trying to lock everything down. That tiny noise from a large body that desperately needed oxygen. It alerted the jackals. And the closest one turned around, arms of his letterman's jacket creaking as he did. Everything was in slow motion. Are you fucking crying? You fucking pussy? And Jackal once said this without thought. And technically he said everything without thought, but he realized his mistake very quickly, and David looked back at him with rage growing in his face. He was gonna kill this dog, and I was gonna get to watch it happen. I wasn't nearly as happy as I thought I should be. The jackal did look scared for a moment, but then David relaxed his face, he put his hands on his eyes, and he gave up. He just cried. And 2 or 3 more jackals came to the back of the class. They're ignoring Mr. Thompson's warnings. They sensed a big kill, and no tiny English teacher was going to stop them. Oh, what's the matter? Did somebody get their period? Oh, does your pussy hurt? Look at this little bitch. And there they were reducing him to this worst thing they could possibly imagine, a woman. And David did nothing. He stopped crying. His cheeks were wet. He sat there staring at them, and they continued their taunts, these real men. None dared touch him, of course, but they kept up their abuse. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, somebody yelled, "Leave him the fuck alone!" And no one in that room was more surprised than that it was me. "Oh, look at that little bitch has a bitch," said one of the jackals as another pushed me over the desk. And this brought unbridled laughter to the pack, and it spread through the room. David stood up, and everyone fell silent. He looked at me, he looked back at the pack, and he just stood there glaring. 2 security guards came in. They pushed David into the wall. They handcuffed him. He made no attempt to stop any of it. They pushed him through the door, and he looked back at me for 1 second, with no emotion at all. That was the last time I ever saw him. And for the rest of the year, the Jackals would talk about what a little bitch David was, and how they fought him and won, and the fight was better every time they told. Regular people started referring to him as a pussy because he didn't fight back. I tried to defend him a few times before giving up. I mean, there's one thing I learned, and it's that you can't fight stupidity, especially if it travels in packs.